Ey, Shalom, Michelle, when the stuff was given no praise, Diabba, Shem, Melshaba, Shem, Dash, double honors to the apostles of GMS, and honestly, brothers, doing the work in truth, while sincerity. It's a real quick one, on rain, right? Once again, inspired by TV documentary that I was watching. I just did a video about, but this one in particular is rain now, because I was watching it, and basically this documentary was speaking about how one of those planets, apparently rains methane, whatever, what have you. It really made me think about the importance of rain. We know the importance of rain, right? But also in terms of judgment, right? Because the Lord, when the Lord originally made the earth, right, there was a dew, right, which we're gonna get, the mist. You wake up in the morning, you'll see, early in the morning, you might see a mist, right? It's wet, the grass is wet, but it's not been raining at all, right? That's how the earth was watered. However, the Lord basically caused the need for rain to come upon the earth, right? And in that basically came a punishment upon the people, right? Because you can have too much rain, right, i.e. flooding, and you can have too little rain, right, i.e. droughts, and then you can have one which is worse, which is too little rain followed by too much rain, right? Now I wanted to get some information on that last point, too little rain, i.e. a drought rather, followed by a flood, right? And how that's even worse than both of them, right? But I couldn't find anything quickly, but from my understanding, right? You can look into this further yourself, right? Basically, when you get the drought and then it's followed by flooding, the flood basically just washes away a lot of nutrients that was left over in the soil, right? The very little that was left over, very little, or whatever it was that was left over in terms of nutrients in the soil, right? Because basically the rain comes and it just takes it away, right? So it can really fuck a group of people, really judge a group of people up with rain, right? So now it says droughts are a type of natural disaster that involve below average precipitation or severe water supply shortage over a sustained period of time. Right, it says effects of drought on the environment. Water is essential to all life, and a shortage of this vital resource in the environment is bound to negatively affect all forms of life. The environmental effects of a drought can include wetlands dry up. So a deficit, this is from the World Atlas, by the way. World wetlands dry up. A deficit of water can lead to the drying out of wetland habitats. Since such habitats support a great variety of flora and fauna, I believe flora is flowers and fauna is like wildlife, as in animals and stuff like that. It says the survival of all these life forms becomes difficult when there is a deficit of water. Right, it says pollution of surface water, lower levels of precipitation, i.e. basically rain, right, and the loss of water from water bodies like rivers and streams means that pollutants accumulate on land. I didn't even know this, right? It says, and in remaining surface water resources, since rain and flowing water bodies, right, usually carry away the pollutants by draining the land. A lack of such water resources leads to the contamination of soil and remaining water resources with pollutant, right? Which also makes you think about switches talk about rivers of living water, right? So when you basically ain't got that flow, what you get? You get that stagnant water, right? And that stagnant water ain't good, right? It says, so I'll carry on. It says the health of plants is adversely affected. It says droughts always lead to loss of plant life. And if you think about vegetation, if you ain't got any rain to water any water to look after your vegetation or whatever, you gon' get a famine, right? So the health of plants growing in low water environment is always poor. Plants thus become highly susceptible to pest-borne diseases, and as a result, large areas of drought-affected areas often lose their vegetation cover. Right, so that's a double whammy that's been perfectly designed from the Lord, right? So that you have this drought, right? Then you have this vegetation that comes, but because it's weak, right, you basically get hit by pests, right? And then it dies. So what little there was there, it just dies, right? It says dust storms become common in the absence of water. Soil dries up and becomes susceptible to wind erosion. Thus, droughts often trigger dust storms, which in turn negatively affect the environment, including plant life and human health. Loss of biodiversity. Most plants and animals living in areas experiencing a severe drought are unable to survive. As a result, entire populations of a species can be wiped out from the area. Thus, drought-affected areas exhibit a great loss of biodiversities. So wildfires become common. The absence of precipitation dries up foliage, and if temperatures are high, this foliage can catch fire. Therefore, wildfires are highly common during droughts. In the absence of rainfall to extinguish the fire, wildfires rage through vast areas, destroying all plant and animal life in the area and leaving the land barren and lifeless. It says that also animals are forced to migrate. It says the lack of water and food during droughts force wildlife to migrate to safer places where such vital resources are available. So once again, you have, let's say you did have some wildebeest. Wildebeest clean? I believe wildebeest are clean. It's a video, but in itself, the clean animals. It was mentioning someone needs to do a video on like what animals are clean and what animals are unclean. Right, so let's say a clean animal, right, was in the area, but then, all of the vegetation died, right, and then the animals that remained moved on, because there was nothing to eat. So then you're literally left with no food in an area, or from less rain. Right, so many animals died during such journeys. Those managing to reach better habitats often die after failing to adjust to their new habitat. And also says increased desertification. It says droughts can accelerate desertification caused by overgrazing, deforestation, and other human activities. The lack of water further kills plants, leaving little chance for the land to recover. Right. And then, like I said, I wanted to get one also on flooding. Right, it says cause and effects of flooding. It says the amount of rainfall received by an area varies from one place to another, depending on the location of the place. In some places, it rains almost throughout the year, whereas in other places, it might rain for only a few days. India records most of its rainfall in the monsoon season. Rains are a big relief after the hot and sunny days of summer. The growth of crops is also dependent on the arrival of monsoon, so it's dependent on it, right? It says, however, excess rainfall is disadvantageous in many ways. Right, heavy rains lead to rising of water levels of rivers, seas, and oceans. Water gets accumulated in coastal areas, which result in floods. These floods cause extensive damage to crops. Once again, domestic animals. Once again, property and human life. Right, during floods, many animals get carried away by the force of the water and eventually die. Right. So yeah, once again, showing you then if you get too much rain, then once again your crops can be ruined and your animals can be killed. And this one, you end up with no house on top of it as well, right? So too much rain, too little rain. This is Genesis 2 and 5 though. It says, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. Right? For Yahweh power had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground, right? But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground, right? So there was there was that mist that was going from the ground, watering the ground. But then here comes along the story of Noah, right? And then basically the Most High made it such that rain started coming from the heavens. Right, and that first rain was an event of biblical proportions, right? It was we still talk about the flood of Noah to this day, right? So now you had that flood where it was too much rain, and ever since we've been having rain. And whenever it gets too heavy, the Lord basically puts out I forgot the word to use. Basically puts out a reminder to the world that, look, I'm not going to flood the earth ever again. I'm not going to destroy the earth by flooding again, right? Which is the rainbow, right? But what do we have here? We have Esau, the so-called white man, who's used it as a representation for homosexuality, right? Which, he's going to have to pay for that. Right, it says 2nd Ezra 15:49. It says, I will send plagues upon the earth, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence to waste our houses with destruction and death. Right? So they going to be, some adverse weather that's going to destroy crops. Right? The Lord's going to send some plagues that's going to destroy crops. Right? And that's going to result in, in famines. Right, and if I'm not mistaken, where was it in America's seen adverse weather that's damaged their crops this year, right, to the point where it was something like, I remember Post Ramla was doing a video on it, basically saying how, like, I forget which state it is, but they were saying there was a good chance of of food shortages, right? This is 2nd Ezra 16:18. This is the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these things shall come? Right, I'll read verse 17. I'll jump up 17. It says, woe is me, who will deliver me in those days. Right, so this is Ezra, right, the prophet Ezra, basically saying, look, man, fuck, this destruction gonna be something. Who's gonna deliver me? Right? Because he saw the death and the destruction, right? He saw the famine, right? And it's very easy, a famine can be caused by any which way, right? Adverse weather is one of them, right? But also, most food's imported in these big cities. If there's no food coming in, these people will just end up eating each other, right? Verse 19 says, behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment, right? Now, I'm from Zimbabwe, and there's, certain parts, there is apparently, a water shortage, and that anguish, that mental stress of like, fuck, I'm gonna have to walk for ages to basically find some drinking water, right? These are people having to do these things, right? Because not everyone has access to this, water systems where, you just open your tap and water comes out. In different parts of the world, you've got wells. And Zimbabwe is one of them. Some people have that flowing water, but some people have wells, right? And if your well dries up, then you have to go further out. You actually have to travel to find a well with fresh water. And that's just part one. You then have to take it back, right, to your family, for food, right, for drinking, for cleaning. It says, but for all these things, they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of of the scourging. Behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon us. So right now, things are cheap, right? Your things that you buy, your snacks, your this, your that. Right, it says that they shall think themselves to be in good case. Everything thinks they're all right. They can't imagine a world where, in the West anyway, where they've actually got to travel a mile for their water, and a mile back, right? They wouldn't even know what to do. Where the cleanest drinking water is, right? It says, and even then shall evils grow upon earth, sword, famine once again, and great confusion. For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. So, this famine that's to come, this is basically saying, look, man, a lot of people, and dying of famine, that's one, humbling, and two, that's a painful way to go, right? But the Lord has basically designed this such that that's what's going to happen out here in these last days, right? This is Sirach 39:28 says, there be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes, and at time of destruction they pour out their force, and appease the wrath of him that made them. And who made them? The Most High. It says, the fire and hell and famine and death, all these were created for vengeance, right? So when you see famines upon the earth, the Most High is doing that. Why? Because people need to get judged, right? And this is I'll end on this, Zechariah 14:17. It says, and it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King Yahweh of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. Right? And once again, what do you end up with when you have no rain? You end up with droughts, and droughts cause famines, right? So, hey, as always, Lord's will, that was edifying. And until the next time, I'm going to say, Shalom.